Hello everyone and welcome to the first ever episode of the Stylish Study podcast. I am Ella, the founder of Stylish Study. In this podcast, we are going to cover everything revision related, and we're also going to touch on those topics that no one really teaches you about in school. From friendship dilemmas to feeling anxious, volunteering, UCAS forms, all that good stuff, we are going to chat about it on this podcast. Today, we are kicking off the first ever episode with finding your why. If you are someone that is just getting into studying, or you really need to study but you're just lacking some motivation, this is the episode for you. So what is a why? Your why is kind of your mission statement. It's what's going to keep you on track during those harder days where you don't have as much motivation. It's really going to tap into your emotions and your experiences, and we're going to deep dive and find a why that actually works for you. It's essentially discovering your real reason, your true purpose for wanting to achieve this long-term goal. Long-term goals can be harder to stick to, which is why having this real personalized bit of motivation is really going to help you. Your why statement is going to become absolutely invaluable to you as you go through this process of either bettering your grades or whatever it is that your long-term goal is. It will become invaluable. It will become that thing that you always refer back to and keep in the back of your mind when things get tough, when you need a bit of motivation. It's going to help you stay on track, and it will ultimately mean that those big goals get achieved. So the reason why I am so passionate about everyone having a why is because my two whys really kept me on track when I was going through my own personal experience with studying. If you haven't heard my story before, I didn't get the best GCSE results, and that's not anything that I am ashamed of. It's not anything that I ever hide. It is actually a massive turning point in my life, and something that I like to discuss because I think sometimes that failure can be seen as such a negative thing. However, we can learn so much from it. So if you've ever had a failure before, you're going to probably find it a lot easier to pick your why from someone that hasn't before. So we're going to really turn those negatives today into a positive. So I didn't do very well in my GCSEs. I pretty much floated through the whole of year 10 and 11, kind of expecting those decent grades to come. During primary school, I was kind of one of those kids that I did study as much as you do in primary school. I did do the hard work, but at the same time, those kind of good grades, as much as you are assessed in primary school, came to me quite naturally. So when it came to GCSEs, I kind of thought, well, I'll kind of just do the same thing. Like I might revise like the night before the exam. We'll just see how it goes. That is essentially what happened. And I had predicted grades of 7s and 8s. And I was like, yeah, we're going to get that so easy. Kind of just floated through the whole thing. I was doing English and I didn't know the story of Macbeth, and that was one of my books. I still couldn't tell you what the story of Macbeth was. I just, as much as I wanted those grades, it wasn't as important to me. I just wanted to kind of chat with my friends. I'll do a bit of hard work here and there, but I won't really put in any extra effort, and I'll just kind of expect it to come to me. So when I opened that envelope, which ultimately held pretty much only 4s and 5s. There were a couple of 6s in there, but I didn't get any higher than a 6. And bearing in mind, those aren't bad grades. I always want to stress this. That is not a bad grade. But for me and for what I was aiming for and what my targets were, that was missing the mark. Sometimes by 4 grades. That's how bad it was. So when I opened that envelope, I burst out into tears. And I cried in front of all my teachers. I wouldn't tell my parents what I actually got for my GCSEs. I was so embarrassed and I felt like a massive failure. And that is a massive turning point for anyone. When they have something that makes them feel so bad, you can sink or swim. And don't get me wrong, I wanted to sink. I spent probably a good 2 or 3 weeks kind of sulking, not really being very motivated to do anything. I was just kind of like, well, that's school. School's hard. I don't really care. And the thing was, I knew that I hadn't fulfilled my potential, but I was fearful of failure and not knowing what to do, that I never did anything, that then ultimately I just got that feeling of failure because I never even tried. And so nothing ever worked. I sank for a bit and I kind of just didn't care. And then over the next couple of weeks before we went back to school, I met up with my best friend, who is going to come up a lot in this podcast. So I'm just going to say Ez because it's going to be so much easier just to call her by her name. So me and Ez, we met up and we were basically like, look, why don't we just try? Why don't we just get these really good grades and try and fill our potential? And then at least no one's ever going to say anything because we tried. And if we tried and it didn't work, then we didn't lose anything. There was also a lot of negativity around us at the time. And we were like, look, we can either be really positive and we can really try and no one can ever take those grades away from us if we get them. Or we can just kind of like carry on floating and just never feel fulfilled or like we've filled our potential. So we decided, look, okay, together we're just going to be really good students. We're going to really try and get our grades and we're just going to use those past experiences, turn that negative energy around us into positive energy. And by golly, did it work. By the end of the story, spoiler alert, we both got A's across the board. But I feel like it really took this sink or swim moment for us, and for me especially, to actually wake up and realise, okay, I need to start trying, and if I try and it doesn't work, at least I'll know that I've tried. And it was really my motivation. It was really what I thought about pretty much every day when I needed to put in that hard work, when I just needed to do that extra little push. I was like, I never want to feel that way again. I think a big thing for me as well was seeing everyone else around me with their smiling faces and their envelopes and taking photos and putting it on Facebook, sharing on their Instagram story, being like, woohoo, look at me. And I was there literally crying because I wasn't proud of myself. And I wanted to feel proud of myself. I wanted to feel like I could take a photo of my results and happily send it to anyone that I cared about. I never did that when I got my A-levels, but the option was there and it felt really good. And ultimately, one of the things that I wanted to feel was pride. Drawing on those past experiences to like what I didn't want to ever feel again. And the negative energy that was surrounding me, I didn't want to become that. People could say what they liked about me. People could tear me, rip me up, shred me, do whatever they liked to me, be as horrible as they wanted. But I knew at the end of it, I was going to have those grades. And in 2 years, I wouldn't see you anymore. And one of us would have the piece of paper and the other would, well, it doesn't really matter what they do. But I would have that piece of paper and I would know that I've tried really hard and I've channeled all my energy into myself. And they channeled their energy into ripping me up, shredding me, and whatever else they did to me. It was a sink or swim. It was, okay, I'm going to take this bad experience. I never want to feel that again. People can do what they like to me, but I'm going to focus on myself and I'm going to turn this bad energy and these negative things into positives. And that's really what pushed me through. I was like, look, I just never want to feel that again. And I don't want to be like that person. And I want to have positive things that come from my life. And that really was an absolute motivator. And if I didn't have that experience, I honestly don't think that I would have been half as motivated as I was during my A-levels. I'm not saying that you have to have this traumatic experience for you to actually have a why. My why just came to me quite easily. But if you are someone that hasn't been through this traumatic stuff that I happened to go through at the end of my GCSEs and my start of my A-levels, then good for you because it wasn't the best time. But you have to kind of dig a little deeper. What do you want to feel? Who do you want to be like? Why is it that you are doing this? Is it for yourself? Is it because you want your family to be proud? If it's your family to be proud, I totally get that. But it needs to ultimately be for you. Your self-improvement needs to be selfish. Your why needs to be a selfish reason. My why wasn't for anyone else. It was to defy people. It was to shock myself and to be proud of myself. It was literally that. It was essentially to be proud of myself and show people that they could do what they like to me, but I don't care because I've got these grades and I can do whatever the hell I want now. Because ultimately, school is a stepping stone. School will get you to the next place. Whatever happens, the more you focus on this now, the easier the steps will be later. Not saying that the grades absolutely define your life, but it's nice to feel proud of yourself. It's nice to do something well. And it's nice to have an easier way to get to your next step. So now we've established how I found my why, let's run through some questions that you can actively ask yourself to find yours. So the first thing you can ask yourself is, what inspires you? Now you can ultimately also ask yourself, what doesn't inspire me? So for me, what inspired me was feeling proud of myself. There is nothing wrong with feeling proud of yourself, wanting to celebrate your achievements. That is a totally normal, nice thing to do that I feel like sometimes people will be like, wow, you're so self-centered if you do that. No. Feel proud of yourself, want to feel proud of yourself, aim to feel proud of yourself. If that is something that inspires you, write that down. So what inspires you? What doesn't inspire you? For example, something that didn't inspire me was carrying on my life, not fulfilling my potential. That was really getting me down. That was something that I couldn't come home and feel, wow, I've done a really good day's work. Now I can go to sleep and I can chill out and I can just enjoy my life. I never felt like I was fully reaching my potential, and that didn't feel good. Then you can ask yourself, who do I want to become? This doesn't have to be a person. You can just talk about, what qualities do you want to have? So I wanted to be productive, I wanted to be someone that was active, I wanted to have a lot of initiative, and I wanted to make sure that I was hitting all my goals and I was just being a generally productive person, because that's what makes me personally feel good. It's hitting goals, doing good things, making myself proud, achieving things. That's who I wanted to become. You can also look at this question as the other angle of, who do I want to become, as in a celebrity, a famous person, someone that you may look up to. I think that this is actually quite a good thing to do with a why. Obviously, it can become toxic because you don't want to actually turn into that person. You're never going to be that person, but kind of taking inspiration and looking at how they live their lives in order to implement things that can better your life and better your success is certainly something that is good and that you can do. So for me, throughout my sixth form journey, someone that really inspired me was Grace Beverley. I even put about her in my UCAS application. She was just the all-rounder for me. She was really working hard. She was hitting all her goals. She had had a few setbacks, but she was carrying on. Anything like that. So find someone that you want to look up to. Find someone that their story resonates with you. Maybe it's not even a real person. It could be a fictional character. But taking elements of what they do that inspires you, and then trying to kind of emulate that in your own way, in your own life, can really be a way to help you find your why and help you become that person and more of that person that you want to become. And then lastly, you can really ask yourself, who do I fear becoming? Like, why don't I want to become that person? Why is it that would scare me if I became them? So, for example, those negative people around me at the start of sixth form, I didn't want to become them. That was really like, okay, you're doing your thing, but I don't want to be that. And I'm going to do anything I can to not be that. So really looking at kind of like what you don't want to become. It's sometimes easier to think about like who you actually don't want to be and what you don't want to achieve rather than looking at what you do. And then once you know what you don't, you can easily find out what you do. So who don't I want to become? It could be, for example, I also didn't want to become my past self. I didn't want to live my life how I used to when I was in year 10 and 11. I didn't want to carry on being that person that just floated through everything, that kind of tried a little bit but didn't actually really try at all. Someone that was fearful of trying because they didn't want to get it wrong. You can look back at yourself and your past experiences as well. It doesn't have to be an external person. And none of these things you have to look back at an external person. It can all just be within yourself. It's all self-improvement and it's all going to help. But if you do need to look back at other people and other characters, feel free to do that. So ultimately, I want to wrap this up with saying that finding your why will keep you on track, first of all, and finding those past experiences that you never want to live through again can really be a push to your success. Thinking of failure as something that is bad is going to hold you back, and it will mean that you don't do half the things in your life that you would be great at, that you should be doing, that you could be doing. Trying and failing is not a bad thing, but not trying at all, that's what's worse. So find your why. Find why you want to keep going. Keep that motivation and keep on trying. That is going to get you to the next step. If you try, you're either going to succeed or you're going to learn. And that is all you can ask for in life. So find your why. If you're watching this on YouTube right now, take a photo of your screen, share it with us, share what your why is. What is it that is going to drive you? Write it out on a whiteboard, put it in the front of your planner. Wherever you need to write your why, write a statement and put it somewhere that you are going to see it so often, because I promise you, the more you refer back to this on these days that you really just don't care, the more you're going to keep going, the more things that you will succeed at. So that was the first episode of the Stylish Study podcast. I really hope this helped you. If it did, remember to take a photo, share it with us on Instagram. We would love to see you listening to it. Please, please, please don't be scared of failure. As you've seen from today, if I hadn't have failed, I wouldn't have absolutely soared in my A-levels. So keep trying, keep going, write down your why so that you stay motivated, and we will see you for a new episode next week. Goodbye.